They invited him and his wife to come over and actually physically see the machine. And they are seen walking around the machine whispering to each other, and they overhear her say to him, "Not in my house." Well, we found out later on that what she was talking about was the smell of the oil that's used to lubricate the machine. It was industrial strength motor oil type of thing that smelled terrible. We had to make a concession and find something like the oil that's used in vegetable processing plants that has no odor. Because the next thing that Nathan does, he turns to Dora and Swade and says, "I want one." And Dora says, "Well, that's great, Nathan, but what we really need is the typesetter. Would you be willing to fund the typesetter?" He said, "All right, I'll tell you what. I'll fund your typesetter, but I want you to start making a clone of the engine. And when you're finished with the first typesetter, make a second one for me, and I get the clone, and I pay for all of it, including your typesetter." Well, that was a good deal. So they went for it. And by 2003, they finished the first typesetter, and they're more than halfway done with this. And by the end of 2007, they finished the second typesetter, and the engine is finished. And they call Nathan on the phone and tell him, "Sir, serial 2 is ready. Your clone. We can put it on a 747 and ship it up to you. We understand you want to put it in your living room next to your Tyrannosaurus Rex." It's a paleontologist. By the way, I should show you what this guy looks like. This is Nathan. And he looks like a Scottish elf to me. But he's also in a laboratory setting, you'll notice. He's got 4 PhDs, one of which is paleontology.
Oh my goodness.
And a couple of years ago, he came out with a $600 a copy cookbook. And you need a laboratory to do the cooking. Because he uses fairly strange ingredients like liquid nitrogen, which you don't find in a refrigerator, let me tell you. Anyway, so he said, "You know, I'd like to know one thing." He says, "How much does it weigh?" And he said, "Well, it weighs 5 tons. I don't think my floor can actually hold the weight along with the dinosaur. So I'm going to have to shore that up. Why don't you send it to the Computer History Museum and they can demonstrate it for you." So in early April, it comes in to San Francisco on a 747, comes down 101, and it gets parked where that cafe is located now, out in the line. And so we start demonstrating it, but eventually, but not right away, because when we opened the box that it came in, we found inside a little lady that says, "Contents, 1 difference engine." And all the major screws on this thing had shaken loose, and the machine had disarrayed itself to the point where it was not functional. So we had to call upon all the King's men to come back and put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And that took them a while, about a month. And so it was basically the beginning of May by the time we got it up and running, and then we started to demonstrate it May 10th. 2008. 2008. So we have a 1-year lease until the next year, until 2009. So in April 2009, just before our May anniversary, we called him on the phone, told him we were ready to ship it to him, and he said he wasn't ready yet. So we said, "Okay, can we keep it until 2012? And he said, "Oh no, that's way too long." "Okay, then what do you recommend?" He said, "You can keep it to the end of 2009, then call me back." So we called him back in December 2009. He wasn't ready yet. He extends it to the end of 2010. In December 2010, he's not ready yet. He extends it to the end of 2011. Now, if you think about that, that's until 2012, which is what we asked him. December 2011, he's not ready yet. He extends it to the end of 2012. Last December, we called him on the phone. He wasn't ready yet. He's extended it to the end of 2013. Now, frankly, we're trying to convince him he doesn't want it. Because people like you can't see it in his living room, okay? And he's getting a lot of free notoriety from having it here. However, we're kind of tired of this fiscal cliff, or Babbage cliff that we come to every December. Are we going to have it next year or not? We'd like to know that we had a 5-year lease that we wouldn't have to worry about it so often. So we're trying to convince him to give us a much longer term lease, but we haven't convinced him yet. Anyway, there's 2 ends of the machine I haven't talked about. One is the control section. I said earlier, before we even started, this is not programmable. Let me explain why. It's hardwired. It's steel plates. It's all done by cams, and the cams are exactly the same, and you don't change the cams. You know, nothing has ever changed on this machine as far as physical, mechanical stuff. There are 2 cams for every function. There's 14 functions, so there's 28 cams. Each cam has a separate arm attached to it, but the cams are locked together. So two of them together form a single function. When one cam pushes out, the other cam goes in because that disc goes fallow. Then this one pushes back out, and this one goes fallow. So it's back and forth, back and forth. It's push, push. Everything is being done by push. But one is pushing to the left by the one cam, and pushing to the right by the other. Okay? All right. What do you change if you can't change the actual logic? Because all it does is cause this column to count down and get added to that column over here, and then gets reset back. And well, you change the values of the polynomial. You put a different polynomial, it'll solve that one. Like right now, we're doing two polynomials. Okay? How do you do that? Well, we lift up certain levers to disengage everything except the ability to turn the crank and cause the columns to count down to 0. In other words, we get these gears in between lifted up out of sight, disengaged. And as you turn this, the gears count down and they're not transmitting anything. So when they get all done, they don't get reset. So the odd columns all count down to 0. And the even columns all count down to 0. We're finished with one cycle and everything's 0. Now we go in and by hand, we turn the number wheels and actually put the numbers in the number wheel. Then we lock it all down and start cranking away. And I already showed you, I think I already showed you the polynomial that the values that we're putting in, but I'll show you again. These are the numbers that are put in. Do not put the coefficients of the equation in. Put the difference table in. The standard steps of the difference table. You come up with a difference table for a different equation, you put that in, solve that equation. So that's all it does. It solves polynomial equations by the method of differences. That's it. Just like that. See? Now the number on the very end over here, the constant, 40320, if you look at what the equation is, it's 8x to the 7th. This constant is always the exponent as a factorial, 7 factorial, times the coefficient in front of that particular value. So in this case, it's actually 8 factorial. And 8 factorial is 40320. If you look at those over there, x squared, what's 2 factorial? The answer is 2. What's 3 factorial? The answer is 6. So you already know what the constant's going to be. You can predict it easily. And if you don't get that, there's something wrong with creating the table. Okay. This over here is the printer, the typesetter. Okay. Now there's a tray here. It usually starts out way out here, but every time we stamp a number into it, it moves. Now how do we get the stamp number set up? Well, when this result column turns these gears here, instead of adding to the column next door, they turn these rods, which turn all those gears, which set the number in place in the stamp. Then the stamp is pressed into plaster of Paris, which is in this tray. And you're saying, I don't see plaster of Paris at the moment. There's also a font wheel up here that contains the numbers on, and every time we get the key to actually into the stamping, the number wheel gets set, a roller comes up and inks that, and then the paper comes up and takes the answer off of that, off the paper. So we have a paper trail going on at the same time we have the plaster of Paris. When one particular column gets done, we're down to the last row, there's a sensor that says, there's a mechanical sensor that says, last row, no more room. Is there any more columns available? Yes? Okay. Then what we'll do is we'll pull the tray all the way back out and move it over one column, and then we'll just continue down the next column. And it takes 8 seconds to do that, and that's how long it takes to go from one answer to the next answer. So the operator just keeps right on cranking, and in the process of having hit the end of a particular column, it moves over to the next column. And it keeps doing that until there's no more columns. Now once it runs out of columns, last row, last column, Babbage had 2 AND gates that come together. Basically it's end of page. Babbage had end of page way before Microsoft. Okay. And when it gets to the end of the page and there's no more room in the plaster of Paris, it drops a weight which pulls on this catgut behind it, which comes up over here to this lever, and it releases a clutch that causes the operator now to just simply freewheel on the crank. You can't crank it anymore. Time to change the tray. So he comes over here and he uses the wheels over there to pull this thing back out, take the tray out, let it dry, flood it with liquid metal, like lead, trim it up, put it into a printing press and print directly from the lead plate. So that was the whole idea. There's no human intervention. Now you say to yourself, I don't see any plaster of Paris and I don't see any ink. That's right. You see this? We're volunteers, folks. It takes 3 hours to clean up the mess so we don't make the mess. You're going to have to imagine that part. But there is a plate that's actually been done on this machine that's over in the case. Actually, I think it's a result from a logarithm.
I don't recall actually what that's from.
I think it's a logarithm calculation. Anyway, we've done some pretty complicated stuff with this machine all over the time we've had it just to experiment with it. We're doing a simple one so you can kind of follow it. Now that we've got a good answer again, let's take a look at it and see how well we're doing. And then we'll get to the question and answer part. But why don't you crank it another time? So you can go anywhere you want and watch. Go anywhere you want and watch.
Okay, I think we've heard, what are we on, 225 right now?
I should look. 230.
230. Can you verify that? I don't remember that I verified that one.
Here, someone hold this while I verify. Listen to me while I say.
230 is the one.
230 of mine. 272 6879 1425 1288 8261. Correct.
Good.
If you look on the front wheel, on the number wheels in the front, you'll see right between the 6 and the 7, there's a little metal stub sticking up. Like here, there's a 6 and 7. There's a 6, 7 here. All these have stubs sticking up. When it's going from 9 to 0, that is in the back going the carry lever. That's the trigger for the carry lever. You can see that this number gets given off over to there, and it sets up this to actually stand and move the tray. We are now at 235. And the 235th answer is 31698276635909661. Perfect. Always good. Babbage had a life. He got married in 1814 he had a wife. He got married in 1814 to Georgiana Whitler. And by 1827, which is only 13 years later, she was giving birth to their 8th child. Do the math, he was having a child every 20 months. She dies in childbirth when the child dies with her. He loses one of his sons that year, one of his other sons. And his father dies that year. So 1827 was a very tragic year for Charlie. He took time off, went to Europe, did some studying in Europe. By the time he died in October of 1871, of his 8 children, only 3 remained, 3 sons. They're the ones who basically got all the stuff from the estate. He was an inventor. He invented some rather interesting things, some of which you know, like the cow catcher on the front of trains, the mechanical switch to switch the tracks, so the conductor didn't have to jump off the train and switch it manually. Pontoons to walk on water.